Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Game of Thrones podcast. I'm your host, Carmine of Red Team Review, and I'm joined here once again by Mr. Preston Jacobs. Hello, sir.
Why, hello.
And, of course, we're going to be talking about Episode 4, The Red Dragon and the Gold, which they took from the Fire and Blood book. One of the chapters is called that. Of course, the one where Rhaenys and Aegon and Vhagar and, all that happens in it.
Yes, so. In and they took that story and made it into a much more coincidental one in this episode. Yes, but yes, we'll get into that.
Guys, as always, we're available on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all those good places, so consider checking us out there, and if you do, please leave us a review. It would help out a lot. Also, be sure to leave your thoughts on this episode down below in the comments. We might cover it in the next episode. And of course, I feel like I've been saying this a lot this season, and for a good reason, but I always tell the audience to interact with the video by liking it and subscribing and commenting to help out with the algorithm, because not only has YouTube been kind of suppressing my videos for a while now, but they're also coming after me for like the smallest things, even innocuous words that they somehow misinterpret as a curse word, and then completely demonetize the whole video. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, YouTube has definitely increased their sensitivity to saying fudge and poo-poo. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's definitely becoming a huge issue now, more so than it was before. So yeah, and I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me say that, and trust me, I'm tired of saying it. It's fucking cringe, but I say it for a good reason, because interacting with the video like that really does help. So yeah. Okay, that out of the way. Couple things to talk about in this episode, but before we get into that, we tried to record a while ago, things didn't work out, recordings got messed up, and in the original recording, I remember you saying how you quite enjoyed the episode. And,
I did.
And now you're reneging on that, and you're saying you didn't like it as much?
I quite enjoyed the episode on first watch, because the battle is done so well. It's very exciting. There's little moments in the episode here and there that are quite intriguing, but it's definitely what Hitchcock would call like a ham sandwich episode. So what Hitchcock says is that sometimes you go to a movie and then you enjoy it and then you come home, and it's only like when you're having a midnight snack, eating a ham sandwich in front of the fridge, that you realize that none of it made sense, and so he calls that a ham sandwich. So there's a lot of that with this episode, where looking back as I was doing my review and going through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It also makes most of it is trying to reconcile episode 3, which I think has a lot more problems, but it all lingers and passes through into this one. It's sort of like with Game of Thrones and like episode 5 being, is it episode 5 that's horrible because Kristen Cole bashes in Lonmouth without any explanation, or is it episode 6 that's horrible by not having any explanation at all? It's a horrible event, but the lack of reconciling it makes it worse. And what episode is to blame for that? And so this problem with episode 3 and 4. A lot of crazy stuff happened in episode 3, and episode 4 tries to make sense of it, but kind of fails. But I don't know. Do you want me to explain that, or do you have some other questions first?
Do you mind if we start at the very beginning?
Sure. Sounds good.
So I love that one of the main complaints we had from last season was that it was kind of boring always being in the same two places at the same time. King's Landing and Dragonstone. Yeah, we visit High Tide. Yeah, we visit, Pentos, Bravos, one of the places in the Free Cities. Yes, we're on the Stepstones, but we're only there for like a couple of minutes. We're actually in other locations now, and we're seeing multiple characters. And I love how we're meeting all of these people, and all of them are colorful. If you've noticed, like something I said in my review is how it felt like Dave and Dan were allergic to color. And here, all the characters, their armor, just pop out with color. Like meeting the Brackens and Blackwoods and the Tully kid and just like everybody.
I loved everything at Haren Hall. Mm-hmm. Like I loved like Damon I loved, like, first of all, I love Simon Strong. I think Alice Rivers is an incredible character. I loved Oscar Tully. He was so funny. He was so beautifully naive. I loved the Blackwood that came in. Everything at Haren Hall is great, and it's great to see that new location. I mean, and be in a place that's not King's Landing. It is, yeah. Also, like, I can't believe they picked something that was so very close to the minds of wolves and robins about, like, there being souls in weirwoods and stuff, and, like,
The Minds of Wolves and Robins is one of your theory videos, right?
Yeah, yeah, but it's almost as if again, I don't want to be arrogant and think that somebody watched my video, but it's like one of these ideas that I've been pushing for close to a decade is that, Sweet Robin, by sitting on a weirwood throne in the Eyrie, is getting affected by the souls that are within the weirwood. And the fact that that exact same plot is happening here in this episode, makes me wonder. I'm like, oh, did somebody watch a video or read a Reddit post about this? because this is the sort of idea that, like, people would trash me in the early days. Like, Preston Jacobs is tinfoil. His favorite character is Sweet Robin, who he thinks is, has telepathic powers and is getting affected by souls in a weirwood tree, and everybody's like, "What? How ridiculous!" And then they use that same idea here. So I don't know. It's kind of just funny.
And what they're doing with Damon this season is interesting because there's not much growth you can give this character. The reason the audience loves him so much is because he is the Rogue Prince. He is such a bastard. He is such a douchebag. You like that about him. That's what makes the character pop, that he's so unpredictable. And you can't really take that away from him without rooting the character. So I think what's going on this season, I called it a couple episodes ago, and turns out, yeah, that's exactly what's happening, is that Daemon and Haren Hall will be tested on his loyalties. Because if you saw the episode 5 preview, Alice is in his head saying, "You were made to wear a crown." And it looks like he's maybe going to try to make Haren Hall his base of operations. And we as the audience, I guess we're supposed to think that, whoa, Alice is getting into his head. Maybe he is going to betray Rhaenyra. And we do see that Rhaenyra does come to meet Daemon again. In the trailers, we see her dragon specifically flying to Haren Hall. So I guess the audience is supposed to get this feel of tension that, oh, they're meeting up again, but oh no, Daemon's going to kill her. Daemon's going to do something to her, because we see, he's having visions of a young Rhaenyra and he's chopping her head off. So, oh no, maybe Alice is inside his head and has convinced him to betray her. But I think ultimately what's going to happen is he's just going to reaffirm his loyalty to her, and because they needed something to do with him this season, because they can't have him clashing with her constantly, and they can't have him fighting the Greens just yet. And also, you're the one that keeps saying how this portrayal from Daemon in the show of him being somewhat disloyal and going behind Rhaenyra's back, that's a far cry from how he is in the books, where he's just a real loyal soldier.
He is a loyal soldier, and there's definitely both that. There's hints of him going against Rhaenyra, but it's like, is he fearing that he's bringing about her death, or is he getting driven towards causing her death? That ambiguity. But we started seeing elements of Aemond in this as well, like him following himself, and then having himself turn and having an eye patch. Seeing Aemond within himself, is also predicting the future, that he needs to fight Aemond. And I guess that's the way to. I mean, I definitely like where they're going with it, because they're essentially saying, like, what's your future, Aemond? Do you want to be? Or what's your future, Daemon? Do you want to be like Aemond, like some psychotic, power-hungry dude who's just in it for himself?
But does Daemon know enough about Aemon to really know all that? To know that he's the psychotic, power-hungry monster?
He knows he killed Luke.
That's true.
So, who's obsessed with, like, the wrongs that people, he's obsessed with the wrongs he's had to bear in the past, which is Daemon too, right? Obsessed with these, like, the slights and the wrongs. and wanting
Right, but that's what I'm
revenge.
saying. Like,
Yeah.
we, the audience, know that about Aemon, but does Damon give a fuck enough about Aemon to know that much?
Right. I mean, well, we'll see. We'll see where this is going. And again, like the werewood is clearly putting ideas in his head. You know, the werewood and Alice Rivers and whatever powers that be, whatever old man, whatever three-eyed crow happens to be north of the wall right now. Who knows? But like, you know, it's definitely that's definitely the signal there. Like, seeing himself as Aemon is definitely a signal. Like, are you Aemon or are you something better? You know, and so, you know, we need this redemption story for Daemon, I guess. I see what they're doing. They've established Daemon as pretty evil, and now he needs to turn a corner and realize that he needs to do something good.
I must say, even though we were in Haren Hall before in Game of Thrones, we got to Haren Hall in Season 2, and we were there briefly in Season 3. It feels like Haren Hall has more personality here. And I think it's because of the Strongs. I think it's because of Alice River. But at the same time, yeah, it just feels like Ryan Condal knew how to use Haren Hall a bit more effectively than Dave and Dan did.
They spent a lot more time on atmosphere. I mean, Haren Hall, even though you had some wide shots of Haren Hall before, when you're in those rooms with, like, say, Tywin talking to Arya, that could be any room. Yeah. You know, like, what makes this Haren Hall like worse than any other castle? You know, like, yeah, it looked gray and looked miserable, but Winterfell looked gray and miserable. Like, it didn't look that different. Here, man, Haren Hall just looks like a fucking hellhole. Like, all the chairs are like burned and pieces of them are missing. The water is dripping everywhere. It has a personality of its own. It definitely just seems like just a horrible, horrible place.
Before we move on from the Haren Hall stuff, which, by the way, I didn't think I would like, but I'm actually really enjoying it. Did you catch the Game of Thrones, at least the A Song of Ice and Fire Easter egg when in this episode specifically?
Oh, which one? There's so many.
The Black Goat at Haren Hall?
Oh, you think the Black Goat was a reference to Vargo Hoat?
Yeah, why not, right?
I guess. I mean,
it had to be. I mean, come on. Ryan Condal's a book fan as well, so he's got to be throwing some in there.
I guess. I mean, I guess I guess in a sense that if he's seeing, I'm going to try to, like, honeypot this. Okay, so because Damon is seeing both past and future, because he saw the vision of Aemond in himself, like he saw the eye patch, and Alice said that you will die here and all of that. He sees the Black Goat, and it's like a vision of the future, you know, that of so many years in the future, where he sees the future, and he sees that Vargo Hoat is going to get cut from the show, and
I mean, technically we had a Vargo Hoat clone, kind of, not really, like an alternate version of him with Locke. So
yeah, but
even though Vargo is not the one that cut off Jaime's hand in the books, wasn't it?
It was under Vargo's orders, but it was the person that actually took his hand was Zolo the Fat.
By the way, speaking of book references, I want to bring up the eggs that Rhaena takes to the Vale and how they're supposed to be Daenerys' dragon eggs, which was confirmed by Episode 3's director, but then Ryan Condal walked that back. I have to ask, what's going on here? Like, are these guys even talking to each other in the writer's room?
Yeah, no, we talked about this in our destroyed, lost podcast. What's funny about the show is that depending on what writer and what showrunner and what director is being interviewed, you get different answers. So if you go and you watch the Inside the Episodes about season 1 and say, Damon, why did Damon leave the brothel and leave Rhaenyra there? Depending on who's talking, you get different answers. Some are like, oh, Damon realized he was doing something wrong and couldn't go through with it. Others are like, oh, Damon was bored with the situation because he was not in power. Others are like, oh, Damon couldn't get it up. And all sorts of different explanations for why he stormed out of that brothel and left Rhaenyra there. And so, you know, it's funny because in a way it's kind of like Fire and Blood, where you're getting unreliable narrators, but the unreliable narrators are the show creators. Like, the show creators don't know what's going on and like aren't communicating with each other. And so we end up with like, I don't know, it's up for interpretation on everything.
But here's the thing, in Fire and Blood, that was on purpose. Whether or not Alice Rivers is a woods witch or she's an ancient being, because Gildane and Munkin and I think Mushroom go back and forth on that. Everyone has like their different explanations.
Yeah.
That was on purpose by George. I don't think this is on purpose. I really do think it's
sometimes
people
not
it's
talking
sometimes
to each other. It's sometimes on purpose with George, but a lot of times it's just George making mistakes. But yes, sometimes. Yeah.
That's fair. But no, I really don't think it's on purpose. I think it's Ryan Condal wanting to have complete control over a lot of the lore that he's putting into the prequel.
Yeah.
And you have these people where maybe he's talked to them in private, where like he's spitballing ideas, but nothing's concrete. Right. And maybe he hasn't made that clear that this is not concrete to these people. So he tried to be very diplomatic about it in his interview, saying that this is a potential path.
The thing is that like when a show is being created, there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, and there's things that the actors come up with, there's things that the writers come up with, there's things that just spontaneously happen while they're filming, there's things that the showrunners and producers, there's things that the editors create, and storyboard people create. All any little thing any person can affect the truth. And so the one we talk about a lot is the actress that played young Alicent. She and the actress that played young Rhaenyra, they thought Emily Carey and Millie Alcock, they decided that there should definitely be a lesbian overtone to the interaction between Rhaenyra and Alicent when they were young, and they definitely acted that way. That was not communicated to Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy. And so if you're watching those early episodes of House of the Dragon and you think that there is a sexual tension between them, you are not imagining that. Like, those actresses wanted that interpretation. They talked about it and they played those scenes that way. They never communicated that to Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy. And so Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy went into their scenes and played them the way they did, without any knowledge of that. So, there can be a lack of communication on anything. Do I think it changes the show very much? I don't think so. But it's just an interesting little thing to notice that, in the first part of the season, there's not that. Or Emily Carey had her little tick where she would play with her fingernails. And you see Olivia Cooke do it in one episode of House of the Dragon. I think it's episode 9, but I haven't seen her do it again. The Emily
She was
Carey,
too busy being an asshole to her son and not caring about his feelings, and then fucking Kristen Cole. Which, by the way, speaking of Cole, I actually like the character when he is not with Alicent. And I don't want to be one of those. I don't want to be the House of the Dragon version of those people who always hate on Catelyn. But Alicent really, I do think, is, as of right now, one of the worst parts of the show for me. Because she really doesn't have anything to do other than just to kind of be an asshole to people, or
be an asshole to everyone, right?
Or to just I don't want to say her scenes are filler, but I really don't care. I care more about what Rhaenys is doing. I care more about what Rhaenyra is up to when she's not doing stupid shit like going to the set last episode. I care more about what Baela and Rhaena are doing, because Rhaena specifically, barely gets any screen time. When it comes to the women of House of the Dragon, I think Alicent is the one character who needs less scenes. Helena, I would argue, needs more scenes than Alicent. I just...
Oh, I mean, what happened to Helena, right? Where is she? How's she feeling about having her kid killed? You're right. Allison, and this is a fault of the source material, though, that, once Aegon takes control, Alicent disappears from the story for a long time. Yeah. Essentially until Rhaenyra takes King's Landing. So they are giving her something to do. She was very instrumental in this episode, and her being an asshole to Aegon causes Aegon to fly off and have his doom. And so they're making her important, even if she's, not really important. Yeah. But it does seem rather illogical. Why? You're going from this woman that was trying to stop war and doing everything she can for restraint to all of a sudden not caring and being completely mean to her son and causing her son to go off and immediately get killed. Maybe they're seeming to be linking her to all the tragedies, right?
Yeah, but linking her to the tragedy. This is why this is the bullshit from that Sept scene in episode 3 at the very end.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Alicent misinterpreted the whole situation. That doesn't matter. She has no real power because, as we saw in the Green Council episode, Otto and Tyland and all those other people were planning to usurp Rhaenyra regardless of whatever the hell Alicent swears she heard. The only thing Alicent really had control over was whether or not Rhaenyra would be killed. And even then, it didn't even matter in the first place because of the thing that happened with Aemon and Luke and so on and so forth. But no, Alicent doesn't really have...
It's her fault. They've made it her fault that the rat catchers were able to kill, like Blood and Cheese were able to kill Jaehaerys, had Kristen Cole been standing guard, so she has that guilt hanging on her head, and now she's going to have the guilt of driving her son off to be in battle by being a jerk. So they're slowly trying to make her crazy in linking her to all of the events. Because now, I mean, later when Helena takes her life, like that's going to be all connected to, again, because it's already been connected with the kid dying, and maybe they're going to have another conversation that drives Helena to what she does. But yeah, they're putting all of the emotional weight on Alicent.
They are, but in the process, my God, the character is very unlikable. Holy shit!
I mean, maybe she was. I mean, I'm sure someone will make the argument that she was feeling unstable because she had taken the moon tea, and so her hormones were all over the place, and she wasn't in a great mood.
Mm-hmm.
You could make that argument, and therefore it all goes back to like the problem is her banging Kristen Cole.
Right.
So maybe it's that, but
no, my boy Cole. I actually like him quite a bit as a military commander. He's great to watch. I do like the Roose Bolton maneuver that he pulled. For those of you who don't know, in the books, I forgot which one it was, which battle it was specifically. Maybe the one where Tyrion partakes. Roose Bolton sends out some of his rivals first, and then it mostly keeps his men back. That's what Cole does here. He sends out the conquered Stokeworths and Rosbys out in front and keeps the Hightower men in reserve.
So I'm not sure that they're actually Hightower men, because they've changed the green sigil to being green. If you actually see, a lot of them are green with a Targaryen dragon on the front. So they might not be Hightower men. They might actually be Targaryen men.
Well, the Targaryens, I realize the Targaryens don't really have like a standing army. They only have like guards that have the Targaryen armor. But no, those are Hightower men because we established last season that specific helmet style is all Hightower. Even though they changed up the heraldry, they're still Hightower forces.
Yeah, I forgot that you pay attention to the armor quite a bit.
I love the armor. The armor is fucking awesome. That stuff is like really like, yeah. Aegon's armor in this one, the Valyrian steel one. Mm-hmm. I'll let you talk about the lore implications of that because in the books. In the books, in the Forsaken chapter, doesn't Damphair say how in all of the Seven Kingdoms no one has had any set of Valyrian steel armor? Yeah,
it's quite so. In the books, in the Forsaken chapter, the preview chapter for the Winds of Winter, Euron has a Valyrian steel armor that he wears going into as they go off to battle at sea. And Aemon takes this, or I'm sorry, Aeron takes this to mean that Euron has been to Valyria, and that it's proof that he's been to Valyria because in all of the Seven Kingdoms, no such armor exists. I would not necessarily make that jump. Keep in mind that they've been raiding the red wines for weeks at this point, and so they can easily have like secretly found a red wine like armor from years and years and years ago that they've had that they've just been keeping as like this like So it might be that the red wines had the armor, not that he actually went to Valyria. And so, but that's the only appearance of the armor. And so Ryan Condal takes it from the position that, well, if anybody's going to have Valyrian steel armor, it would be like Aegon the Conqueror. And so it would be logical that they would have it. And so Aegon puts it on. In the source material, in Fire and Blood, when Aegon gets burned in his battle with Rhaenys, his armor melts to him, and it's one of the reasons he's hurt so bad.
Right.
But George R. R. Martin is really bad with melting points of metal, and like when things burn, like, you know, if something were hot enough to have the armor melt, the rest of the body is going to be completely burned and completely, you know, combusted into nothing. I mean, there's no like armor melting onto your body. Like you'd be dead. You'd be long dead before that would happen, because it would be so incredibly hot that your entire body would desiccate and burst into flames. Like it's ridiculous to think that you could have armor melt on your body. And this goes to like, it's also ridiculous that gold would melt in a pot on a fire with the Dothraki, and that you could pour it on Viserys' head. Okay, George is horrible with these melting points and everything. That would never freaking happen. Okay, and it's funny because I bring some of this up with like Quentin is alive and stuff, like the whip being on fire, and it's like, well, leather doesn't burn, but does George R. R. Martin know that leather doesn't burn? And the answer is, well, at the Battle at the Wall, Mance Rayder builds turtles, you know, like they're essentially upside down ships that you carry over yourself to stop flaming arrows. He uses leather turtles like that, and they don't burn. And George R. R. Martin knows in that scene that leather doesn't burn. But then someone also pointed out that there's some leather that's on some sword handles when Stannis is burning the seven gods on the beach, that does burn. So maybe George R. R. Martin doesn't know that leather burns, or he's schizophrenic about it, or he knew at the beginning of Clash of Kings, but he realized his mistake by a storm of swords. It's really hard to say, but it's the same with these melting points of metal. He should really know that armor can't melt at that you know, but that's ridiculous. So I imagine that Ryan Condal is trying to save the situation by having it be reversed, that he's going to have, like, it's a little weird that Aegon survives, that maybe the Valyrian steel armor protected him from the fire rather than enhancing the harm from the fire.
Damn, you're really going to go that far, huh?
Well, we'll see. I mean, they might say like, we'll see if the next episode, if they're like, if he wasn't wearing the Valyrian steel armor, he'd be dead, you know, or something like that.
Someone was trying to say to me, I actually had a conversation with you about this briefly. Someone was trying to say to me how Targaryens are immune to fire, but they're not immune to dragon fire or something like that.
We have no evidence of that. We have no evidence of any differentiation between fire X and fire Y. No. I mean,
and it's because of what happened with Dany, how she was consistently fireproof throughout Game of Thrones, when in the books, that one situation at the funeral pyre with Khal Drogo, that was like a one-time thing. It was magic and miracle and all this. So
yeah, this is a big deal. So in the show, Dany is consistently fireproof. Okay, so she survives the pyre, and then later, knowing that she can survive the pyre, she burns the cows and walks out and is fireproof again. Fine. Dany is fireproof 100%, but Viserys is not, so it's not every Targaryen. In the books, George R. R. Martin has said in interviews, or in an interview, very clearly that the pyre was a one-time thing.
The interview he said that in, we had to go, I needed some help from my community to find the interview, and the website, eventhorizon.com, was like it's no longer available. So we had to use
it's a 25. It's a 25-year-old interview. Yeah.
Yeah, we had to use like the Wayback Machine to find this, and the question was from someone named Granny, and they asked specifically, I think it was in 1999 or 2000, that long ago. So I swear we tried looking for this online, but we couldn't find it unless it was that one website. I'm sure it's out there, and maybe we didn't try hard enough.
But he's being consistent because in A Dance with Dragons, Dany gets burned. She's burned in the Dothraki Sea, and she's recovering from burns. So, Targaryens aren't fireproof. The only kind of reason that we think that they're fireproof is that we've got the pyre, and then you've got like Dany liking hot baths, and Egg not getting sunburned very easily and liking the heat in the Dunk and Egg stories. But that's about it. Nobody else is fireproof. I mean, clearly, like Aerion Brightflame, like burned himself with wildfire, and Egg and all of the Targaryen family was burned up at Summerhall. Like clearly Targaryens are not fireproof. Like it's overwhelming that the like overwhelming proof that they're not fireproof. I mean, they get cremated when they die. So I don't, and I've seen no differentiation between dragon fire and regular fire, but whatever.
That's what I said in my review when someone brought it up. But no, the battle at Rook's Rest, I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was great. The arrows, the defender archers had some really cool formation that we didn't really see that much in Game of Thrones. I love when Sunfire's belly is slit open. Some of the boiling fluid burns the people below. The collateral damage from the dragons actually fighting each other. That was really fun. Kristen Cole,
the scene where the guys, the armor is still together, but the guy is actually ash and he falls apart. The brutality of that.
Don't ruin the fucking battle, Preston. Stop it.
I think that's completely legit.
I quite liked all of it. I thought it was really good. Especially the collateral damage part. That part is specifically. I feel like
that's almost it's probably accidental, but that's almost a criticism of George's description, because in this situation you see that someone would be incinerated inside their armor and the armor would not melt, and that's why he's right. But meanwhile George has the armor melting onto someone and them surviving, so it's almost like the complete opposite situation. But I mean, Ron Condal's situation is much more realistic, Maybe I'm not sure if the armor would be that shiny, but but nonetheless, you'd incinerate the person. Like if it's hot enough, you'd incinerate the person inside, and then you'd fall apart,
Kristen Cole had his. He kind of had the 1,000-yard stare after that whole moment where he's like disoriented after getting knocked down.
Yeah.
Kind of. He almost had that, but no. We also see Kristen Cole really is loyal to Aegon. He really is, because as Aemon's about to put this dude out of his misery, Cole's like, "No, don't."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
And fucking Aemon is that psychopath who. There are two types of people out there. There are people who, if you're driving on the road and you cut them off, you'll exchange unpleasantries. And then you guys will go about your way. But Aemon's the type of guy where he'll follow you home.
He'll follow you home and then kill you. Yeah, because you cut him off on the highway. Yeah,
because.
Yeah.
And I will say this: it's because Aemon is that psycho, and he says because he was bullied a lot. We only had one scene of them bullying him, and that was it. So I'm hesitant to even believe that they did it all the time, because. It didn't seem like that was the case. It was just that one time thing that we saw.
Just the one time, the pink dread incident, and then him arriving at the brothel and laughing at him because he decided to have sex with the sex worker again.
Look, I'm not saying that we should have more scenes of that kid being bullied, but it really I think they dropped the ball.
Considering what he goes to, you don't feel like the boiling over the edge point is there too. The I'm murdering my brother is you don't think it's there. He hasn't been pushed to that point yet, right?
I wouldn't think so, but I guess he's that type of psychopath. Okay, fine. I just wish we saw it more when he was a kid.
I mean, I can understand the losing an eye a lot more, right?
Yeah,
You lost an eye, of course you're going to be angry at this kid, and then you're going to kill him. And so he like somehow has restraint and regrets. And remember, he told the sex worker that he regrets killing Luke. And here, my brother made fun of me at a brothel, and I'm going to murder him. I'm going to let him die. So I'm going to let him die and then try to murder him. That's a little. Had there been something worse, like it wasn't even that bad. Like I say, had it been like, Aemon, get out of here, my boys need to have sex with your sex worker, it would make a little more sense. But instead he's like, ha, I guess this one is taken. And then Aemon being like, no, she's not taken, and then leave.
See, where it would make a lot of sense is if they had a scene where, well, they did have a scene in season 1 where Aemon clearly stated that he wouldn't mind marrying Helaena. Okay, fine. Sure. But it would actually make quite a bit more sense that Aemon has this hatred of his brother because he treats her badly, because he abuses her or something like that. Like, if they've shown him doing that to her, and then Aemon, like, sees it from afar, and just his anger builds, and, so on and so forth. Like, that would make more sense as to why he would want to, like, do this whole killing of Aegon. But the whole bully thing, once again, I'm not saying we should have seen the little kid get bullied in season 1 more, but there was never a moment where, Aegon pushes him and, he keeps prodding and picking on him, and he thinks it's fun and games because, he's the big brother and so on and so forth, and clearly Aemon's not having a good time. There's never any scenes or moment like that, So I wouldn't blame people for saying it came out of nowhere. But to me, it would have made more sense as well as if Aemon, who we all know clearly is into his sister Helaena, it would make a lot of sense if Aegon was somewhat abusive towards her and Aemon wanted to protect her, and he saw his way to do this by taking him out in that moment. But of course, we don't really see that. They don't really show us that.
We never see Aegon treated. I mean, other than infidelity, which, it's one thing when you have a romantic marriage where two people agree, like, make their own agreement that they should not cheat on each other. But it's another thing when you're forced into a political marriage with your sister. I don't fault Aegon for seeking sex other places, and I'm sorry for just demonetizing your video.
No, you're fine.
I fault him for that. I fault him if the story is true about him liking child fights and abandoning his bastard to child fights. If that's all true and he knows about it, then I blame him for that. But I don't really blame him for infidelity.
This really should have been like this. See, that right there, that should have been Aemon's like misguided sense of honor, where he hates his brother because of the child fights, because of the sexual assault, because of all this other crap. He hates his brother because he feels his brother is a terrible person. And they had a chance to show us more of that hatred that Aemon has of his brother in episode 9 by confiding in Criston Cole, because they seem like bros. They actually seem like best buddies in season 2, and they missed it. So
I have justification. This is a horrible person, or that Aegon really screwed things up with his political decisions or something. But Aegon didn't really screw anything up with his political decisions. Like, that's the thing, is nothing reaches the level where I'm like, oh yeah, no, that guy needs to die. Like, oh well.
Oh, and before I forget, you wanted to dive into the Criston Cole Aemon battle thing, and I think I should probably say this now because I do get this every now and then in my comment section, even though it's a comment about you. People, I understand that this is the internet, and there are only two emotions on the internet. You have to either love something or hate it. There's no middle ground. I will always reject that. I'm always someone who understands that there's nuance and context and intent, and, there's gray areas here. And sometimes they're just very lukewarm on the whole thing. But the one comment I always get about you is that, I wonder what Preston's going to hate about the episode this time. And I think what people don't understand about you, and you've made this very clear, just because you nitpick certain things and criticize it doesn't mean you hate the whole thing. You're just pointing out some of the flaws that you've noticed in this one thing.
Right. I mean, I do like it. I do wish certain things were different, but also keep in mind that because we have these channels and we're forced to rewatch these episodes many times in a row, you start noticing the little things that you wouldn't on the first watch. So, and eventually you kind of try to put it all together and you're like, oh, like, I mean, I certainly understand why they did these choices. And once you kind of step back, you go, wow, that doesn't make any sense. I understand why they did it. But man, it's weird. So, I mean, do you want me to explain what I'm talking about?
Yeah, go for it.
Like mainly. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Criston Cole's like military strategy is more or less to feign that he's trying to go to Haren Hall, but then secretly go to Rook's Rest, reveal himself, and lure a dragon. Now, I want you to think about like why he would need to feign to go to Haren Hall, and why he would even need to be a secret. Because keep in mind, in the book material, there's no secret. He just marches to Rook's Rest. He's trying to lure a dragon. He wants to be found. So there's no reason for secrecy. In fact, like secrecy goes against what he's wanting. So why the feign to Haren Hall? And remember, the feign to Haren Hall makes even less sense when you look at the fact that when he left, Haren Hall was ruled by Larry Strong. So he's feigning attacking their own castle to then go to Rook's Rest, to hiding in the woods and then revealing themselves to lure out Rhaenyra, to lure out a dragon. Why are they feigning? And why are they keeping themselves a secret?
So I did notice that, and I figured it was either because they know Aegon would bitch and complain that they were not following his battle plan specifically and doing his own thing, or because maybe Cole and Aemon suspect there's a spy in the council for the Blacks. But the last one doesn't make that much sense, considering Cole's plan was to lure in a dragon, so the information leaking doesn't really matter.
Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. Now, I've figured out why they narratively did it, and they narratively did it for two reasons. The episode 3 was called The Burning Mill, and everything is supposed to be in reaction to the Burning Mill, when in fact nothing is in reaction to the Burning Mill. Damon takes Haren Hall independent of the Burning Mill, didn't know what happened. Then Criston Cole says, "Oh, we need to march because I need to take Haren Hall to deal with the Riverlands." But he's not going to the Riverlands. He's going to Rook's Rest. So it has nothing to do with the Burning Mill. And then Rhaenyra's Black Council talks about the Burning Mill and how they should loose dragons, but then Rhaenyra refuses. The only thing... So, I mean, the Criston Cole needs to march because of the Burning Mill is needed in the sense that, like, Criston Cole has no narrative reason to leave King's Landing that episode. Only later this episode is Aegon like, why are you taking Rook's Rest? I want Haren Hall. But keep in mind, they owned Haren Hall when he left. There was no reason to march on Haren Hall. He could have, and Aegon was like eager for battle in episode 3. He was ready for people to go out and fight and didn't like people waiting. So the only reason that, well, it's not the only reason, there's one more, but there's two reasons why they invented this feign to Haren Hall plot, which makes no sense, is that one, they wanted, narratively speaking, a reason for Criston Cole to leave that episode. The whole episode is about the Burning Mill, so they needed to catch it. They needed to link it to the Burning Mill, even though it has nothing to do with the Burning Mill. The Burning Mill is an irrelevant event in episode 3, except for one other reason. And that is Rhaenyra needed a reason to go to King's Landing. Rhaenyra thought that a big battle was going to happen between Criston Cole and Daemon, and that lots of people were going to die. And so she went to King's Landing to talk to Alicent. That's the only reason why a battle for Haren Hall at this moment in the story needs to exist. For Rhaenyra, for Criston Cole to leave, and for Rhaenyra to have a reason to go to the Sept.
Okay.
Because really, really think about it. Like, there's no reason for the feign. There's no reason for the feign. And again, in the source material, there was no feign. He just marched, and the same things happened. So you realize that, like, wow, And remember, I was bitching about how many things are wrong about the Fane. Like, they own Haren Hall. Why would he be marching on it? And like, what does the Fane do? Like, who's getting tricked? Like, what purpose does the trick, like, do? It doesn't do anything. Feigning towards Haren Hall doesn't do anything. Now, and then they hide in the woods again for no reason. I mean, it's kind of weird and illogical that they'd be, and hard to believe that they'd be able to keep like thousands of soldiers hidden in the woods for seriously a month without anyone finding. But then they all of a sudden pop out in order to lure the dragon over. They didn't need to hide in the woods. They could have just marched and had Aemond like behind a little bit. And then when the dragons came, have that battle, which is what they wanted. Like, you know, Aemond hidden a few miles behind or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. In fact, that's what they do in the book. In the book, they just march and they're like waiting for the dragon to come. So like, there's this entire plot, like Kristen Cole having his little coy grin, like, and Gawain being like, but Haren Hall's to the west. And he's like, yes, it is. And him being like, wait, why are we leaving and why are we going into battle at daytime when we could take them at night? We just are, you know, like, what was the point? There was no point. Like, the entire feign to Haren Hall and secrecy underneath the trees, like, played no role. And I kind of understand that they had to continue that plot into episode 4 and that it's mainly an episode 3 problem. Mm-hmm. But like, what were they, you know, it's just like, you kind of step back and go, what were they doing? Like, and you realize it was all to try to put Rhaenyra in that sept or to give Kristen Cole a reason to march at that moment, you know, when writing dialogue and being, you know, but yeah, it's just all very odd. It's just all very odd. And oh my God. And then the battle itself and the coincidence is kind of overwhelming. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it the Aegon thing?
I want you to think how unlikely it is. Think about how unlikely it is that Aegon arrived at that exact moment.
I know what you mean. And it took him.
But think, right. And think about this. What was the one thing you complained to me? Last time we talked, I remember your biggest complaint about the episode. You said you didn't understand why Alicent was being so mean to Aegon.
Yeah, my whole thing was that I hate how the showrunners, the writers, are trying to gaslight into thinking Aegon is like a terrible person, a terrible ruler, or that he's weak when he's been at the job for like, what, a week or two?
Right. And since we talked about it, first of all, we thought it was just really mean because you're like, Aegon's only been at the job for a few weeks. But also, if you rewatch that scene, he goes to his mom and says, I shit you not, he says, Cole and Aemond won't listen to me. And then Alicent says, the men on that council have earned their spot and they have wisdom and you have no wisdom. And it's like, wait, okay, I can understand that about Ironrod and Tyland and Orwyle, but he specifically was complaining about Cole and Aemond. Cole and Aemond didn't earn shit. And Aemond is on the small council for no reason at all. And Cole is on the small council because Aegon liked his plan to send Auric to try to assassinate Rhaenyra. Alicent doesn't respect either character's military mind. She thinks both of them are reckless. She thinks Cole, she in episode 3 like was complaining that Cole was being reckless, and she talked about her son like being reckless and being a monster. In no way does Alicent think Cole and Aemond are wise. So like even this like conversation, and first of all, this conversation needs to happen because that conversation is what triggers Aegon to leave.
Right.
So we have this incredibly illogical conversation where Alicent, for some reason, decides to be super mean to Aegon and defend Aemond and Cole, who she does not respect, to motivate Aegon to leave at that exact moment.
I know what you mean, and this is something I said in my review of how all of this was to piss Aegon enough to get him to get out of there.
Right.
Yeah.
Now think about the coincidence. Cole has been marching for like a month. Okay. We have no idea when the Battle of Rooks Rest would be happening. 2 days before, 2 days later, who knows? Aegon leaves at that exact moment. What would have happened had he arrived 30 minutes prior? Okay? 30 minutes prior, Rhaenys wouldn't have been there.
Mm-hmm.
He would have flown in. His brother would have flown up and been like, dude, you're spoiling our plans. Oh, okay. Had he arrived 2 minutes later, Aemond is already fighting Rhaenys. He arrives in this exact perfect window of time, prompted by the most illogical fucking discussion in the whole episode. Allison trashing her son, defending Aemond and Cole's wisdom. So this is what happens when like beautiful battles like distract you from the story. The first time through, I was like, oh, what a great beautiful episode, great acting, great direction, great battle, and then I go back and I pay attention to the plot. I'm like, oh my god, this is horrible.
You're too logical.
I know. That said, there's certain moments that I really loved. I really loved Aegon like approaching Sunfire. You know?
Oh yeah, it's very clear his dragon is one of the very few things in this world that really loves him unconditionally.
I thought the storyboarding for the battle was brilliant. You know, I thought it was a great action sequence. I thought Laurie Strong was creepy as hell. You know,
yeah, that's the one thing that always remains consistent with a lot of the King's Landing guys is that Larys is always, every time he enters the room, it's like he's scanning around trying to find weaknesses and what's going on in this situation. Yeah. Something he can use to his advantage. And not even Littlefinger had that.
But yeah, but stepping back and I'm just like, wait, why are they doing any of this? Why are they doing any of this? I was fooled, Carmine. I was fooled in my first watch.
I don't think you were fooled. You turned off your brain for a moment and you had a good time.
Yeah, I did. I turned off my brain for a minute and had a good time.
Yeah, you did. You know you did. Come on.
I know, of course.
But for the most part, I actually really did enjoy the episode. I love the battles. I love the Haren Hall stuff. Even Rhaenyra coming back. The one thing that annoyed me about that is that I'll have to go back and rewatch the episode again. I've seen it 2 times. I'll need to go watch it a 3rd time and focus on this one specific thing. We don't really know, or we do know, kinda, how long Rhaenyra has been gone for. And several characters talk about it a little differently. Because it feels like she was only gone a couple of days, but I swear another character made it sound like it was weeks. So I'll have to go back.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't quite make sense in that they show Duskendale and then they march to Rook's Rest. And it seems like, yeah, Rhaenyra's been gone for days, but like, say she was gone 2 days to get to King's Landing and 2 days back. Like, there's no way that they're marching an army from Duskendale to Rook's Rest in 4 days. Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
And then in that same time period, Aegon is able to get drunk, get on his dragon, drunken and dragoning, and fly over there as fast as possible and still reach them. When it took Cole, a month to get there?
Yeah. So this is why I say, like, the logistics of this is it's on north of the Wall territory.
I wouldn't say it's that bad, but you're right. Yeah. It's dancing around that.
Yeah, where people are instantly getting places when it's convenient, and communication is happening when it's convenient. Things take just the right amount of time for the scenes to fall in order, rather than for them to make any sense. But yeah.
But no, regardless, even with these minor issues that I have, and to me they are fairly minor. To you, I understand that, you have that clockwork brain. It's gotta fit in all those pieces, and that's understandable. For me, it's fine.
Like I say, I enjoy each scene, by themselves. Each scene is beautiful by itself, but when you start thinking about how the scenes thread together into a narrative, it just doesn't make sense. Each scene is beautifully directed, beautifully acted. I'm really digging how exhausted Gawain Hightower is and where his brain is, and he's just oh my god, he seems like he's been to war. Think about his personality when he left versus how his character now. He really spent time thinking about well, where would I be at this point of weeks and weeks of being at war, battle after battle, not knowing where Kristen Cole, you can see it on Gawain Hightower's face. There's so many little details that are beautiful, But then, like, also just narratively, the whole thing doesn't make any sense to me. But
No, I understand, but like I said, I still enjoyed it. Episode 2 for me is still my favorite, followed by this one, and I would say episode 1 and then 3. So far, House of the Dragon doesn't really have any bad episodes. They've all either been very good or fine. I will say, though, because I mentioned this last time, it almost feels like, because you're right, House of the Dragon has these moments where the episode will be fine, and at the very end it'll have like some weird slip up or some weird hiccup where it just wasn't executed properly. The Blood and Cheese in episode 1, and then the Alicent Rhaenyra meeting in the Sept in episode 3. I likened it to the Star Trek movies, where the original Star Trek movies, the even numbered ones were better than the odd number ones.
yes, and it's no so far that is completely true of first season and second season, right? Episodes 2, 4, 6, and 8, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 are way better than 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. 1 being the one that I'm like, okay, maybe that one's better. Maybe the pilot doesn't need the same sort of hate as episodes 3, 5, 7, and 9, but it's definitely an even odd thing. And here it's again like episodes 2 and 4 are just of a much better quality than 1 and 3. So I agree with you. It's weird.
Yeah, it is what it is, but for the most part, I am enjoying season 2 at this point much more than I'm enjoying season 1. There's a lot to like about it, and I love the new characters. I love the new locations. It's almost like they took every complaint we had with season 1 and fixed almost all of them. The one things I would say that they still need fixing are shooting nighttime scenes. That's still an issue. And the weird inclusions at the very end of episodes where they try to be as neutral as possible, or they try to show it from these other characters' perspectives, which we don't really need, right?
Yeah.
Because we had to see Blood and Cheese perspective, we have to see Rhaenyra's perspective, which is wanting to avoid war at all costs, where, once again, I feel as though that scene in episode 3 was unnecessary, considering they will meet again in the future, and they can have that conversation then. It's just a lot of unnecessary things and unnecessary decisions, but for the most part, even though those episodes have those unnecessary things, I still enjoy them nonetheless. But episode 4 I thought was a banger. George liked it. He actually put out a blog post about it where he quite praised it. And then he went into this whole thing about dragon history in TV and movies. And then he brought up the thing that you actually brought up, I think, last time in season 1 2 years ago, about the dragon heraldry.
Oh yeah, I mean, so so George R. R. Martin is because he's a sci-fi guy, and he fully admits that it's because he's a sci-fi guy. He like gets really anal about certain things that have to be like biologically accurate. So like there's no animal that has 4 legs and wings. So like animals that have wings, like bats, for example, like the arms are the wings. So you're going to have 2 legs and then the wings. You're never going to have 2 arms, 2 legs, and then wings, even though a lot of mythological creatures have that. So when he made the dragons for Ice and Fire, he had them have 2 legs. Other dragons in other media will have 4 legs and wings. His have 2. And he's very proud of this. He brings it up all the fucking time. For Game of Thrones, the heraldry is correct. For the first 5 seasons, the Targaryen sigil has 2 legs and wings. And then all of a sudden, starting in season 6, they added some arms. And he's just like, yeah, crap. And then Ryan Condal felt that like, some reason House of the Dragon should be consistent with the later seasons of Game of Thrones rather than the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones. And so the 4-legged dragon exists in this show as well, much to the dismay of George R. R. Martin. He is very upset and angry about this. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they screwed this up. Why would they do that? But why would you want to be consistent with the wrong one that came later? But there it is. Ryan Condal has his own explanation. Like he's just like, well, they did it they made the switch to 4 legs, and that switch must have happened for a reason. And maybe it was because Danny did some research and found out that this was the actual sigil. And I don't know if that explanation makes sense, but there it is.
Yeah, it's I must say George has been quite active on his blog lately. Now, I'm not saying that's any proof of Winds of Winter, but he kind of low-key called...
In fact, it's the reverse. He specifically is talking about various activities he had and how it doesn't mean Winds of Winter is coming.
Well, I mean, for a man who's supposedly working on Winds of Winter, he's certainly not that busy enough to be going all over the place. And I'm not saying he called me out specifically, but I feel as though, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, we've been doing Winds of Winter is Coming videos due to George R. Martin's blog post. We've been doing those types of videos for years. It's kind of tradition and meme at this point for me to go, holy shit, it's coming, and for you to go, Carmine, sit down. We gotta have this talk. It is tradition at this point. So I feel like everyone should know that by now, but yeah, it's it is what it is. But no, so you're in agreement with me. Episode 4 was pretty good. You just have like these minor issues with it that sometimes come in and
well acted, well directed. But like I said, the whole narrative, they've got some real serious narrative parts. But I think it's all fundamentally the fault of trying to put Rhaenyra in that sept. I think if they didn't want Rhaenyra to be in that sept, they could have made it all make sense. But they had to change things around to put Rhaenyra in that sept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you mind if we wrap it up here?
Sounds good.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.